이거 뭐나?
The restaurant fell silent. Every fork stopped halfway to every mouth. Bruce Lee sat perfectly still at the corner table, his black shirt crisp against his calm posture. But his eyes had changed. 3 men in expensive suits stood around his table, laughing. The biggest one had just shoved Bruce's elderly mother, sending her stumbling backward into a waiter carrying hot soup. "Old people should eat at home," the man sneered, his breath reeking of whiskey. "Not in places where important people dine." Bruce's mother clutched her arm where the hot soup had splashed her skin. A red mark was already forming. She looked at her son with worry in her eyes, silently begging him not to react. She knew what he was capable of. Bruce hadn't moved yet. His hands remained flat on the table. His breathing stayed steady and controlled. But anyone who truly knew martial arts could see it. The way his jaw tightened, the subtle shift in his shoulders, the focused intensity that settled over him like a storm cloud gathering strength. "Sir," Bruce said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper, "I suggest you apologize to my mother and leave." The 3 men burst into laughter. "Or what, little man? You going to teach us a lesson?" Before we continue this story, if you want to see how Bruce Lee handles disrespect and defends those he loves, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what happens next. Now let's see what made Bruce Lee finally lose his legendary calm. This wasn't just any restaurant. This was the Golden Dragon, one of San Francisco's most prestigious Chinese establishments in 1965. It was a place where cultures met, where Chinese immigrants celebrated their success, and where American business people came to experience authentic cuisine. Bruce Lee was 25 years old. He had just opened his 3rd martial arts school in the Bay Area. His reputation was growing. People whispered about the young man who could move faster than the eye could follow. Students traveled from across the country to learn from him. But tonight wasn't about martial arts. Tonight was about family. His mother, Grace Lee, had arrived from Hong Kong just 3 days earlier. At 62 years old, she had never visited America before. Bruce had saved for 2 years to bring her over. He wanted to show her everything he had built. The schools, the students, the life he had created. This dinner was supposed to be special. He had reserved the best table, ordered her favorite dishes, wanted everything to be perfect. Grace Lee was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, with silver hair pulled back in a traditional bun. She wore a simple blue dress, the one she saved for special occasions. Her hands were wrinkled from years of hard work, but her eyes sparkled with pride every time she looked at her son. The 3 men at the neighboring table had been drinking for over an hour. Robert Mitchell, a real estate developer, sat in the center. He was a large man, over 6 feet tall and 240 pounds. His face was red from alcohol, and his voice grew louder with each drink. On his left sat James Cooper, a lawyer who laughed at everything Robert said. On his right was David Chan, a Chinese-American businessman who should have known better. They had been making comments for the past 20 minutes. Subtle at first. Jokes about authentic Chinese people. Remarks about accents. Whispers loud enough to be heard. Bruce had ignored them all. He was used to prejudice. In 1965, being Chinese in America meant developing thick skin. He had learned to choose his battles carefully. But then Grace had stood up to use the restroom. She had to walk past their table. That's when Robert Mitchell deliberately stuck his foot out. Grace, not seeing the obstacle, stumbled forward. She tried to catch herself, but bumped into a passing waiter carrying a tray of hot soup. The soup splashed across her arm and dress. The porcelain bowl shattered on the floor. The entire restaurant turned to look. Grace stood there, soup dripping from her dress, her arm already turning red from the heat. And the 3 men laughed. "Clumsy old woman," Robert Mitchell said loud enough for everyone to hear. Maybe at her age she should just stay home. That's when something changed in Bruce Lee's eyes. The calm, peaceful martial artist disappeared. Something ancient and protective took its place. The restaurant manager rushed over with towels. Other diners whispered in shock. But Bruce's focus remained locked on the 3 men at the neighboring table. His mother was hurt. Someone had deliberately hurt his mother. And that changed everything. Bruce stood slowly. The movement was so smooth, so controlled, that it seemed like he was floating upward rather than standing. He helped his mother back to her chair, gently examining the burn on her arm. It wasn't serious, but it was painful. He could see tears forming in her eyes, not from physical pain, but from humiliation. "I'm fine, son," she whispered in Cantonese. "Please, let's just leave. These men are drunk. They're not worth trouble." But Bruce wasn't looking at her anymore. His gaze had fixed on Robert Mitchell, who was still laughing with his friends. The restaurant manager, an elderly Chinese man named Mr. Wong, approached the table nervously. "Mr. Mitchell, perhaps you and your friends should settle your bill and leave," he said quietly, wringing his hands. "You've caused a disturbance." Robert Mitchell stood up, towering over the small manager. "A disturbance? That old lady walked into our area. Maybe you should train your customers better. Or better yet, keep people like her in Chinatown where they belong." The words hung in the air like poison. Several Chinese families in the restaurant stiffened. This wasn't just rudeness anymore. This was open racism. This was the 1960s, when such words were often spoken freely, when many people believed certain groups belonged in certain places. David Chun, the Chinese-American businessman, looked uncomfortable. He knew he should say something, do something, but he had spent years trying to fit into American business culture. He had learned to laugh at jokes about his own people. He had trained himself to be one of the good ones. Now, faced with this moment, he found himself frozen. Bruce walked toward the three men. His steps were measured, precise. He moved like water, flowing across the restaurant floor. Other diners watched, sensing that something significant was about to happen. Some mothers covered their children's eyes. Some men leaned forward, curious. Everyone held their breath. "I asked you once to apologize," Bruce said, his voice still quiet but carrying through the silent restaurant. "I'm asking one more time. Apologize to my mother and leave peacefully." Robert Mitchell looked down at Bruce, sneering. Bruce was only 5 feet 7 inches and weighed about 135 pounds. Mitchell outweighed him by over 100 pounds and had 6 inches of height advantage. From Mitchell's perspective, this was going to be easy. "What are you going to do, China boy? Show me some of that fake karate from the movies." "It's called Jeet Kune Do," Bruce replied calmly. "And it's very real." Mitchell swung first. It was a wide, clumsy punch fueled by alcohol and arrogance. To everyone watching, it looked fast. But to Bruce Lee, trained since childhood in Wing Chun, educated in Western boxing, philosophy, and biomechanics, the punch moved in slow motion. Bruce didn't block. He didn't need to. He simply shifted his body 3 inches to the left. The massive fist sailed past his face, close enough that he could feel the air displacement. Mitchell stumbled forward, off balance from the missed punch. What happened next took approximately 1.3 seconds. Bruce's right hand shot forward in a straight punch to Mitchell's solar plexus. The impact wasn't hard enough to cause serious injury, but it expelled all the air from Mitchell's lungs. As the big man doubled over, Bruce's left hand came up in an uppercut that stopped 1 inch from Mitchell's jaw. A warning. "That was your first lesson," Bruce said quietly. "Real martial arts is about control. I could have broken your jaw just now. I chose not to." Mitchell staggered backward, gasping for air, his face turning purple. His friends jumped up to help him. James Cooper, the lawyer, was smarter than his friend. He could see that Bruce Lee was in a different class entirely. But Cooper made the fatal mistake of reaching into his jacket, making it look like he might have a weapon. Bruce moved again. A sweep kick took Cooper's legs out from under him. The lawyer hit the floor hard, his head bouncing once against the carpet. He lay there, dazed but conscious, staring up at the ceiling in confusion. That left David Chun, the Chinese-American businessman who had sat silently, letting his friends insult his own people. Bruce looked at him with disappointment that cut deeper than any physical blow. "You're the worst of them," Bruce said softly. "They're ignorant. But you? You know better. You should be standing up for people like my mother. Instead, you laugh with those who disrespect us." Chen's face flushed with shame. He couldn't meet Bruce's eyes. He had no defense, no excuse. He simply sat down, his head bowed. The restaurant remained absolutely silent. Robert Mitchell finally caught his breath. rage replacing his earlier arrogance. He charged at Bruce like an angry bull, all subtlety abandoned. This time Bruce didn't hold back quite as much. The techniques came in a blur. A side kick to Mitchell's leading knee, precisely angled to cause pain but not permanent damage. A ridge hand strike to the neck that temporarily paralyzed Mitchell's right arm. A sweep that sent the big man crashing to the floor for the second time. Bruce stood over him, not even breathing hard. Third lesson. Size and strength mean nothing without skill and control. You outweigh me by 100 pounds. You have every physical advantage. But you don't understand balance. You don't understand structure. You definitely don't understand respect. Mitchell tried to get up, but his legs wouldn't cooperate. The precise strikes to his pressure points had temporarily disrupted his nervous system. He would recover fully in about 20 minutes, but right now he was helpless. Bruce turned back to his mother's table. Grace Lee sat there, her burn temporarily forgotten, watching her son with a mixture of pride and concern. She had known about his martial arts training. She had watched him practice as a child in Hong Kong. But she had never seen him in actual combat. Never seen the full extent of what he had become. The restaurant door opened. 2 police officers entered, responding to a call about a disturbance. They saw 3 men on the floor in various states of distress, and immediately assumed Bruce was the aggressor. In 1965, that assumption was natural. A Chinese man standing over 3 white and Chinese American men could only mean one thing in many officers' minds. "Hold it right there," the first officer said, his hand moving to his baton. "Step away from those men." But Mr. Wong, the restaurant manager, rushed forward. "Officers, please. This young man is the victim, not the aggressor. Those 3 men attacked his elderly mother. He was only defending her." "Is that true?" the second officer asked, looking around the restaurant. "Did anyone see what happened?" Silence. In 1965, many people were afraid to get involved in police matters, especially when it involved racial tensions. The Chinese families looked down at their plates. The white diners suddenly found their food fascinating. No one wanted to be a witness. Except one person. A white-haired American man in an expensive suit stood up from a corner table. "Officer, I saw everything. My name is James Harrison. I'm a federal judge." These 3 men deliberately assaulted that elderly woman. The young man showed remarkable restraint in defending her. If anything, he should be commended for his control. I've seen bar fights that cause far more damage. The officers' attitudes changed immediately. A federal judge's testimony couldn't be ignored. They turned to Robert Mitchell, who was finally getting to his feet. "Is this true? Did you assault that woman?" Mitchell, still gasping for air, suddenly realized the legal danger he was in. Assault, battery, possible hate crime charges. His real estate business depended on his reputation. "It was an accident," he muttered. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone." "Then you should apologize," the second officer said firmly, "and leave before we decide to press charges." Mitchell looked at Grace Lee, then at Bruce, then back at the officers. Pride warred with self-preservation. Finally, self-preservation won. "I'm sorry," he mumbled toward Grace, not quite making eye contact. "I had too much to drink." "Not good enough," Bruce said quietly. "Look at her. Say it properly. Like you mean it." The officer nodded. "The young man's right. Proper apology. Now." Robert Mitchell finally looked directly at Grace Lee. For the first time, he seemed to really see her. Not as an obstacle or a target, but as a human being. An elderly woman far from home, trying to enjoy dinner with her son. And he had hurt her. "Ma'am," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "I sincerely apologize. What I did was wrong. What I said was worse. I'm truly sorry." Grace Lee nodded slowly. In Cantonese, she said to Bruce, "His apology is hollow, but his embarrassment is real. Sometimes that's the best lesson people like him can learn." Bruce translated for his mother, adding, "She accepts your apology. Now leave, and think carefully about the kind of man you want to be." The 3 men gathered their belongings and left, followed closely by the police officers who wanted to ensure they actually departed. The restaurant slowly returned to normal. Conversations resumed. Forks clinked against plates. But everyone kept glancing at Bruce Lee, seeing him differently now. Judge Harrison approached Bruce's table. Young man, that was the most controlled display of martial arts I've ever witnessed. You could have seriously injured those men, but you chose restraint. That takes character. My teacher always said that true martial arts is about preventing fights, not winning them, Bruce replied. Tonight I had to fight, but I only used enough force to stop the threat. Anything more would have been revenge, not defense. The judge smiled and handed Bruce his business card. If you ever need legal assistance, or if anyone questions tonight's events, call me. What you did was righteous. Don't let anyone tell you different. An hour later, Bruce and his mother sat alone at their table. The other diners had left, but Mr. Wong insisted they stay and finish their meal properly. He brought fresh dishes, refusing payment. Tonight, you honored every Chinese person in this restaurant, he said. The meal is my gift. Grace Lee finally spoke, her voice soft but firm. You've become strong, my son. But strength isn't just about fighting. Tell me, why did you hold back? That large man could have hurt you if you'd miscalculated. Bruce smiled. Because father's words stayed with me. Any fool can destroy. It takes wisdom to create, and discipline to protect. I could have broken that man's bones easily. But then what? He learns nothing except to fear. Fear breeds hate. Hate brings more violence. But he hurt me, Grace said. Weren't you angry? I was furious, Bruce admitted. That moment when he pushed you, I wanted to hurt him badly. I wanted him to feel pain like you felt pain. But then I remembered something even more important. You raised me to be better than my anger. You taught me that our actions define us, not our circumstances. He took his mother's hand gently. That man will remember tonight for the rest of his life. Not because I beat him, but because I showed him there was a different way. He expected me to be savage, violent, out of control. Instead, he met discipline, precision, and mercy. That contradiction will haunt him. Maybe it'll make him think. Maybe it'll make him change. Probably not, but maybe. Grace smiled, tears forming in her eyes. Your father would be proud. I'm proud. You could have been a fighter, someone who solves everything with fists. Instead, you became a martial artist, someone who understands that the real battle is always internal. Bruce nodded. Jeet Kune Do isn't just about fighting techniques. It's about knowing yourself, understanding your capabilities, and choosing wisely when and how to use them. Tonight, I used enough force to protect you and stop the threat. I didn't use more. That's the difference between a fighter and a martial artist. What about the other man? Grace asked. The Chinese one who sat with them? David Chun. Bruce's expression grew serious. He's the saddest part of tonight. He's so desperate to be accepted that he's forgotten who he is. He laughs at jokes about his own people. He stays silent when he should speak. He's trading his identity for acceptance that will never truly come. Will you talk to him? Grace asked. If he's ready to listen. But change has to come from within. I can't force him to respect himself or our culture. That's a journey he has to choose. As they prepared to leave, Judge Harrison's words echoed in Bruce's mind. Character is measured not by what we do when it's easy, but by what we do when it's hard. Tonight had been hard. His mother had been hurt. His culture had been insulted. Every instinct screamed for revenge. But he had chosen discipline over rage, control over chaos, and in doing so, he had taught everyone watching what martial arts really meant. The restaurant door chimed as they left. San Francisco's night air was cool against their skin. Grace Lee looked up at her son. This man who had traveled so far from home, who had built something extraordinary from nothing. You know what I'm most proud of? She asked. Not your schools or your students or even your skill. I'm proud that when it mattered most, you stayed true to yourself. You could have become the monster they expected. Instead, you showed them something better. Bruce put his arm around his mother's shoulders. That's because I had a good teacher. You showed me that strength without compassion is just violence. And violence without purpose is just destruction. Tonight I had purpose, protecting you. But I also had compassion, even for the people who hurt you. They walked into the San Francisco night. A small elderly woman and her son, both of them understanding something that few people ever learn. True power isn't about domination. It's about choice. The choice to act or to wait. The choice to destroy or to educate. The choice to let anger rule you or to rule your anger. Bruce Lee had faced that choice tonight, and he had chosen wisely. The lesson for all of us is simple but profound. We all face moments when someone we love is threatened or hurt. In those moments, rage is easy. Revenge is tempting. But discipline, control, choosing to use only the force necessary and no more? That's what separates us from our worst impulses. That's what makes us better than our circumstances. Bruce Lee wasn't just defending his mother that night. He was defending a principle. The principle that strength should serve justice, not ego. That power should protect, not punish. That even in our angriest moments, we can choose to be better than the people who wrong us. If this story inspired you, if it made you think about the difference between fighting and martial arts, between rage and discipline, then smash that subscribe button right now. Hit the notification bell so you never miss stories about real heroes who chose wisdom over violence. Drop a comment below telling us about a time when you had to choose between revenge and restraint. Your story might inspire someone else. And remember, true strength isn't about how hard you can hit. It's about knowing when not to. Share this video with someone who needs to understand that real power comes from control, not chaos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.